Hi, welcome to my presentation on the two theories for today. And so first, we'll look at Erikson's psychosocial development. So first, moving into this, we're going to do a little overview of the theory first, which really, Erikson wanted to look at culture and society and what that really did. So Sigmund Freud, had already been looking at development, but for young children. And so this is where this theory differs, because he wanted to look at the development of people from children to adults. And so, as you can see, the third point is growth through their life. So he wanted to see their development. And so he would look at crises and how they can occur throughout the development. And so this would go into his theory, which gave it 8 stages. And at each stage, there can be a crisis that occurs, which would be the outcome. So once we get to the table, I'll explain what more of the crisis means. So the 8 stages. So going across, here are the 8 different stages. So first, this is with 1-year-old children. Well, really newborn to 1-year-olds, which is trust versus mistrust. At 2 years old, which is autonomy to doubt. 3 to 5, which is initiative versus guilt. 6 to 12, which is industry versus inferiority. From 12 to 18, which is identity versus role confusion. From 18 to 40, which is intimacy versus isolation. From 40 to 65, which is gender variety versus stagnation. And from 65 plus, which is integrity versus despair. And so now we're going to look at a more in-depth look at each stage. So first, which is at 1, from newborn to 1, which is trust versus mistrust. Which, as you'll see, the virtue that somebody wants to take out of this, which the child should learn, is hope. So really, the child is putting in a lot of trust into their parents to teach them what they need to do. And as a result, the children should learn how to hope, to be able to understand the world around them and hope for a better tomorrow, basically. That they have put their trust into their parents so they are able to move forward in life. But if this doesn't happen, they'll have fear and suspicion of the world around them because they won't quite understand it. They weren't given that hope they needed. So now moving into stage 2, which happens from 1 to 2 really, which is autonomy versus shame. And so you'll see the virtue is independence. So what this means is that a parent needs to teach their kid how to have autonomy, which is independence basically. But if this doesn't happen, the kid will have shame and self-esteem issues. So a parent needs to move their children to be able to be independent, but not enough to where they feel like they're getting shamed because they're messing up a lot and they're having a lot of failure. So that's the great balance of giving your child independence, but not giving them too much to where you feel like they're going to fail and they're going to lose their self-esteem. So moving into stage 3, which is from ages 3 to 5, which is initiative versus guilt. And so this is where really peer interaction comes in, where children can take initiative to play with others and to learn the world around them. But in this, they have to learn their limits and what they're able to do. So this leads to the virtue of purpose, where they belong in the world, what kind of person they are. But the outcome could be inadequacy. If they're unable to make these social interactions, they won't feel very good about themselves. So now moving into stage 4, which is ages 6 to 12, which is industry versus inferiority. So basically, this is when you get into school, when you become a part of the school world, if you're able to run with the industry itself and become competent and have competence in the fields that you're learning, which is really the virtue that you want. So children throughout school need to feel like they are learning the subject matter, that they're understanding, and that they're a part of the community. And if this doesn't happen, they'll feel inferior to all the other students. Now in stage 5, this is from 12 to 18, so this is your teenage years. This is identity versus role confusion. So this has a lot to do with body image and finding what makes you you. So you'll see the virtue is fidelity, which really means that you're able to discern what makes you you and what your identity is. And the outcome could be rebellion, that you're going against the mold that you think you should have for yourself because you don't know what yourself is. Now, moving into stage 6, this is from age 18 to 40, which is intimacy versus isolation. So this is basically between these ages, you're trying to find love, trying to find a companion. So that's the virtue, love. And if you don't find these things, it's isolation and unhappiness. So moving into stage 7, which is 40 to 65, this is gender variety and stagnation. So this basically leads, now that you're an adult, you're in your middle age, you're going to start caring for other people, which is the virtue. You have kind of lived, you found love. So now it's time to give that love to other people. And if you don't do this, you'll just become unproductive because you don't really have a purpose anymore. So now 65 plus. So this is basically from retirement age to whenever you pass away. And this is integrity versus despair. And the virtue is wisdom, because are you able to bring wisdom onto the next generation to teach them what you know? And if you don't do that, you'll feel dissatisfied because your life really came to nothing. You weren't able to teach the next generation. So this is basically the makeup of this theory. The whole point of this is to show development throughout the years. So now moving on to the next theory, which is social emotional development. So what is this? Social emotional development is a child's experience, expression, and their emotions with the ability to establish positive and rewarding relationships with others. So this is basically how you interact with others. Positive relationships is really what's at the core of this. And you need to understand and comprehend the emotions of others. And I decided to put anger from Inside Out to show that's not what you want to do. Anger in Inside Out is really the toxic, not the toxic part of you, because you need anger to be a functioning human, but in the movie he's always taking the wheel and forcing Riley down a bad path and not towards these positive relationships, because Riley kind of runs away from home because of anger. So that's the opposite of what we want. So some key points. Really, so positive caregiving helps infants regulate their emotions. Parents can help their children early caregiving to put them down a right path so they're able to manage their emotions and able to build these social interactions. And emotions and cognition work hand in hand. It's shown in the article that basically the more emotionally stable a kid are, the better they're going to do in school. So this is a really important step for parents to take to teach their kids about their emotions. And then so this is moving on to moving into interaction. So infants are able to recognize different adults. This is important for the emotional state. They can start to feel comfortable with strangers and people that their parents are interacting with them, which can give them a better emotional standing. And close relationships with adults give them a better understanding of the world around them. So this just leads them to understand other people by watching their parents interact with one another, so they're able to interact and see how they should function. So through interactions with adults, children are able to reflect on themselves, which gives them a sense of self and higher self-esteem, which is only a positive, because the better they feel about themselves, the better they'll be able to relay that to other people. And this is also moves on to emotions can be influenced by the culture around them. Emotions can be seen in the movie Inside Out as a great example. You can see that sadness and happiness blended together, and a child might see that and learn that they can harness their emotions in that way. And this is really the core of what I think the movie is going for. And so moving on, empathy is able to be understood by children. Children are able to see other children around them and understand their situation and try to help them. Children are able to help no matter what, and that's why empathy is important. And emotion regulation is very important to social interactions. Children need to be able to regulate their emotions to interact with adults, children, and anyone else. And so this leads us into our last point, which is impulse control and social interaction. Impulse control is basically that kids are able to keep themselves together and level-headed. And social understanding is that they're able to understand the social dynamics of the world around them. Both very important things. So thank you for watching. This was basically my sum up of these two theories in very blanket terms. I tried to really simplify this and just show some of the things I learned, some of the key words. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.